Are we truly in the midst of a new industrial revolution? And if so, can we honestly say that it is new technology that is transforming our society? Or perhaps is it the other way around? Hi, this is David Allen Greer for the Global Code. Today's episode is entitled The Radical Technology of Industry 4.0. When traveling, you quickly learn that the software industry has imposed a great uniformity upon the world. Around the globe, programmers tend to work in the same kind of offices. They follow the same kind of schedules, and, ultimately, submit to the same kind of discipline. As we turn to the fields that are currently being influenced or reshaped by software, we find that uniformity, standards, play a role that's equal or perhaps even greater than that of the software itself. The German manufacturing movement, called Industry 4.0, illustrates the interconnected nature of standards and software technology. Industry 4.0 is part of an industrial plan called the New High-Tech Strategy, Innovations for Germany. It was originally drafted in 2006. This report claims that we are in the midst of a fourth industrial revolution, one that they are calling the revolution of Internet of Services. The claim that we're in the midst of a revolution is actually quite questionable. The report asserts that the first revolution occurred in the 18th century and was driven by new textile technology. The second occurred in the 19th century and was driven by the assembly line, and that the third occurred in the middle of the 20th century, and it was driven by the new technology of computer-controlled machine tools. While few scholars doubt the importance of these technologies, most would argue that technology was the effect rather than the cause of industrial change. In the 18th century, for example, high labor costs encouraged manufacturers to build factories and invent tools of mass production that would minimize their costs of labor. A century later, large cities encouraged industrialists to develop assembly lines and build large-scale supply chains that would again make the best use of labor and deliver the greatest amount of products to the expanding markets. Over the past 50 years, global competition has spurred the rise of technological systems that allow managers to reconfigure factories quickly and cheaply, make the best use of materials, and get the greatest amount of products to the largest markets. In our age, we're seeing a new set of forces that expand manufacturing and expand markets. These are, of course, the new trade agreements that have been written over the past 2 decades. They make it much easier to move manufacturing across national boundaries. The Industry 4.0 plan is responding to this global competition by reconceiving manufacturing as a service that operates in much the same way as cloud computing. According to an early report, Industry 4.0 will involve networking and integration of several different companies through value networks. These networks allow factories to share assets as well as specifications, plans, and even control. Companies that are trying to manufacture a good would be able to contract with these networks for only the amount of manufacturing they need. The networks would then distribute the work among the factories in a way that produces the highest quality goods in the shortest amount of time for the least cost. Industry 4.0 requires a substantial investment in new technology. According to German policymakers, it will rely on an expansion of flexible manufacturing systems, new support for the Internet of Things, faster broadband networks, more powerful data analytics, and more machine intelligence for factory control systems. To be successful, this endeavor will demand new standards that will enable factories to share work. It might seem contradictory that an industrial revolution would center on standards rather than on novel technologies, yet standards have been fundamental for all major changes in manufacturing technology. Beginning in the 18th century, English textile manufacturers would copy the standard of Arkwright factories, whereas their American counterparts would adopt the standards of the Lowell system. In the early 20th century, factory engineers would go to Dearborn, Michigan, to study the standard methods of the Ford system. In the past 30 years, we've seen a rapid standardization of computing technology, from standard machine instruction sets, databases, and languages, to standard communication protocols and procedures for developing software. Industry 4.0 will require all of these standards and more. We likely are in the middle of a 2 or perhaps even 3-decade transformation of manufacturing, the one first articulated by German policymakers in 2006. This might indeed create manufacturing technologies that will be unrecognizable to today's factory engineers. If Industry 4.0 is successful, it will be so because a global economy demands it, and because we have been able to create the global software standards that make it possible. This is David Alan Grier for The Global Code. Take care.